The story opens with a striking revelation. A mysterious angelic figure whose presence shakes the very foundation of what we think we know about good and evil. Most people imagine demons as the ultimate source of fear. But ancient accounts tell a different tale, one where an angel, radiant yet formidable, carries a power that surpasses anything attributed to darkness. This figure does not hide in shadows or whisper temptations. Instead, he stands as a messenger of unyielding justice, appearing only when humanity reaches a point where warnings are no longer enough. Across generations, storytellers have spoken of beings who descend not to comfort, but to correct. They act with clarity, purpose, and overwhelming force. This angel is one of them. His actions are not born from malice but from a duty that is older than kingdoms and deeper than any human law. When he moves, entire nations take notice. When he speaks, his voice echoes like a command carved into the fabric of time itself. In this episode, we explore the forgotten side of the celestial world, the part rarely discussed, yet firmly rooted in ancient tradition. We uncover why this angel's role has been misunderstood, why his presence inspires awe rather than fear, and why his story challenges everything we assume about light and shadow. If you enjoy uncovering hidden history, forgotten legends, and powerful stories like this, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue bringing these deep, thought-provoking narratives to life. Now, let us step into the mystery and discover the truth behind the angel who stands beyond every expectation. This angel carries out divine judgment with absolute authority, showing no mercy toward human wrongdoing. And his presence deepens the unfolding mystery that began with the revelation of a being more formidable than any force born of darkness. His arrival is never a spectacle of chaos, but an event marked by a calm so profound that those who witness it feel the weight of their own actions reflected back at them. He is neither cruel nor driven by emotion. Instead, he embodies a purpose shaped by an ancient order, a purpose that moves with precision through the rise and fall of civilizations. Those who have written about him describe a figure whose brilliance is overwhelming yet strangely solemn, as though he carries the memory of every choice humanity has ever made. As the story progresses, the angel emerges not as a creature of wrath, but as a guardian of balance, one entrusted with responsibilities far beyond mortal understanding. His judgment is not fueled by anger, nor does he act out of dominance. When he steps into the world of humans, he does so with a clarity that leaves no room for hesitation. Entire generations have interpreted his presence in different ways. Some saw him as a sign that forgotten promises must be honored. Others believed his arrival meant that humanity had crossed a threshold that could no longer be ignored. Yet all accounts, regardless of their origin, agree on one truth: this angel does not come to negotiate, persuade, or plead. He comes to set things right according to a standard that predates human history. The authority he carries is not a throne, a weapon, or a code. It is the unwavering certainty of his mission. When he moves through a place, something shifts, as if time itself pauses to acknowledge the weight of what is about to unfold. Those who encounter him often describe a stillness that silences every distraction, leaving only the awareness of actions long hidden or long denied. This stillness does not accuse, yet it exposes everything. It does not harm, yet it reveals the cost of every choice made in secret. In this moment of quiet revelation, people understand why he is feared, not for cruelty, but for truth delivered without distortion, truth that demands accountability. Legends tell of moments when entire communities felt his presence before they ever saw him. Winds would settle, animals would grow silent, and even the sky seemed to dim just enough to signal that something beyond human comprehension was drawing near. These signs were not threats but reminders that the world is watched by forces that measure more than deeds, they measure intent, loyalty, justice, and the boundaries humans often cross without realizing the consequences. To some, The angels' arrival was a final chance to confront their own decisions. To others, it was the moment they understood that the balance they had disturbed could no longer be restored by their own efforts. Through every chapter of his story, one thing becomes clear. The angel does not act out of spite or desire for dominance. His role is unchanging and rooted in a law woven into the structure of existence itself. He answers to no earthly ruler, no shifting moral trend, and no human plea. Instead, he moves according to a design that preserves order when chaos threatens to overtake it. And so the tale continues, not as a warning, but as a reminder that power and light do not always manifest as comfort. Sometimes they arrive as clarity, as a force that stands beyond emotion, beyond fear, and beyond the limits of human understanding, and authority that cannot be swayed, and a presence that leaves the world forever changed. Biblical passages suggest that angels can act as agents of destruction when fulfilling God's commands. And this idea flows naturally into the story already unfolding, a story where an angel of immense authority steps into human history with a purpose that transcends emotion, ambition, or earthly power. As the narrative deepens, his role becomes clearer through the echoes of ancient writings that describe beings of light entrusted with tasks far heavier than human judgment can comprehend. These passages do not portray angels as chaotic forces but as instruments of a higher order, carrying out responsibilities that maintain the balance of creation. They appear not out of conflict, but out of necessity, moving with a certainty that leaves no doubt about the seriousness of their mission. When we revisit these accounts through the lens of the angel already introduced, the connection becomes unmistakable. He belongs to a lineage of celestial messengers who act when the world strays too far from the principles it was meant to uphold. In these rare moments, their presence is described as both breathtaking and unsettling, not because they embody malice, but because they reflect a standard of justice that allows no room for manipulation or excuses. Writers of the past often struggled to describe them, using images of overwhelming radiance or a calm so profound that it silenced every unanswered question. Whatever form the descriptions took, the message remained consistent. These beings did not come as advisors or negotiators. They came to carry out a will that humans could neither resist nor fully understand. Stories passed down through generations tell of times when an angel's arrival marked the turning point of a nation, a community, or a moment in history. These accounts emphasize that their actions were not expressions of personal judgment. They were responses to a command shaped by wisdom beyond human reasoning. When the world reached a threshold where decisions had consequences too wide to ignore, an angel would appear, not as an unpredictable force, but as a precise answer to a breach in the moral fabric. His role was not to create fear, though fear often followed, but to restore a balance that had been disrupted by choices repeated for too long without correction. This perspective deepens our understanding of the angel in the story, showing that his unwavering authority is not unique, it is part of a pattern woven throughout sacred history. His presence mirrors the moments recorded in ancient texts when angels acted with clarity, carrying responsibilities that demanded absolute obedience to a divine order. The calm that surrounds him, the silence that precedes him, the finality that follows him all resonate with the same energy found in those passages where angels fulfilled tasks that reshaped the course of human events. He stands as a continuation of that legacy, a figure who does not seek recognition or reverence but simply fulfills a role defined long before the first story about him was ever told. As we follow his path through the narrative, the weight of these ancient parallels becomes part of the atmosphere that surrounds him. He is not an isolated figure, nor a mysterious anomaly. He is the embodiment of a truth preserved across centuries, that forces of light can be both gentle and formidable, both comforting and corrective, and when they descend with a specific purpose, they do so with a certainty that allows no misunderstanding. In this story, as in the old accounts, the angel's actions reflect a justice that is steady, impartial, and unwavering a justice that reminds the world that order is maintained not only through compassion, but through accountability carried out by those entrusted with its protection. The angel worse than the devil symbolizes divine justice, swift, severe, and unavoidable. And as the story continues, this idea weaves seamlessly into the presence of the celestial figure whose authority has already shaped everything around him. He is not feared because he is cruel, nor because he seeks power, but because he represents a form of justice that does not bend under pressure or sentiment. In the world of this narrative, he becomes the embodiment of a truth that has lived quietly within ancient accounts. A truth many chose to overlook, that true justice is not always gentle, and its arrival often brings a stillness that reveals more about humanity than about the messenger who carries it. Seen through the lens of the earlier passages, the angel's presence becomes a mirror held up to decisions made over generations. He does not force anyone to confront their actions. His very existence makes avoidance impossible. The calm that surrounds him carries a weight that strips away excuses, leaving only what is real and what has been hidden. This is why he has been misunderstood throughout history. People saw the finality that accompanied him and assumed it came from cruelty, when in truth it came from the unwavering responsibility of fulfilling a role assigned long before any human nation ever rose or fell. His actions, though difficult for mortals to comprehend, serve a function tied to the preservation of balance, not the pursuit of punishment. The stories that survive about him describe moments when time itself seemed to shift, as if the world paused to acknowledge a presence that exceeded human boundaries. When he stepped into a situation that had grown far beyond human control, he became the turning point not because he sought dominance, but because he represented the last step in a process humanity had set in motion through choices repeated again and again without correction. His arrival was not sudden. It was the fulfillment of a path that had been walked long before he appeared. In that, he was never the cause of fear, he was the consequence of actions reaching their inevitable end. Within the narrative, this angel becomes a symbol rather than a solitary figure, an illustration of a principle woven through sacred history. He is a reminder that light is not always comforting, and that forces aligned with order do not always approach with soft words or gentle hands. Sometimes they appear as clarity itself, sweeping away confusion and hesitation, leaving only truth standing in its place. This truth, when it arrives, can feel overwhelming, especially when it exposes every step that led to the moment of reckoning. And yet the angel never arrives with hostility. He arrives with purpose, carrying out a task that has been set for him with a precision that allows no deviation. What makes him appear worse than the devil is not an inclination toward darkness, but the intensity of justice. He represents justice that cannot be delayed, negotiated, or redirected. The devil in stories often tempts, manipulates, or deceives, allowing space for denial and delay. This angel offers none of those illusions. His presence dissolves every boundary between truth and pretense, revealing the core of every action. And in this raw clarity, humanity often confronts a reality more difficult than any external threat, the truth of its own choices. As the story moves forward, the angel remains a figure whose power lies not in destruction, but in the certainty of his mission. He symbolizes the moment when justice arrives without disguise, when the world must face the consequences that have been forming quietly over time. In him, the narrative finds its central tension not a battle between good and evil, but a revelation of what justice looks like when carried by a being who cannot be swayed by fear, desire, or plea. Through him, the tale continues to unfold with a weight that echoes across every chapter, reminding the world that true justice, once set in motion, is a force no one can escape. Several ancient accounts describe angels wiping out armies, cities, or populations when instructed by God, and within the flow of this unfolding narrative, These stories deepen our understanding of the figure who has already stepped into view, a being whose authority reflects a long history of celestial intervention recorded across generations. These accounts do not dwell on scenes of conflict. Instead, they focus on the overwhelming presence of beings who acted with a purpose so far beyond human intention that entire societies paused in awe. In those moments, the appearance of an angel marked a shift in history, a point where events had reached a threshold that required a response from a realm far greater than any earthly power. When placed alongside the angel we have followed through this story, the parallels become clear. His arrival echoes the same atmosphere of solemnity and inevitability described in ancient writings, where communities sensed a change long before they understood its meaning. Those old accounts speak of nights when silence covered the land like a veil, when the air itself seemed to hold its breath because something beyond human comprehension was drawing near. They depict moments when people realized that their actions, repeated over years and generations, had shaped the path that led an angel to their door. The focus was never on the outcome alone, but on the weight of choices that made such intervention necessary. In this broader context, the angel's presence becomes more than a single event. It becomes part of a pattern woven through time. He is neither unpredictable nor acting by his own will. He follows a design that has guided celestial messengers for centuries, acting only when the balance between order and chaos slips beyond human control. The ancient stories, though told in different eras and cultures, share a consistent theme. Angels appear when the world has traveled too far in a direction it was never meant to go, and their arrival marks the moment when consequences can no longer be postponed. Their actions, however sweeping, are portrayed not as impulses but as responses shaped by a wisdom that transcends the human perspective. As the narrative deepens, the angel's role becomes clearer through these echoes of the past. He does not stand alone. He stands in the lineage of beings who once walked through moments of profound transformation, guiding history through a path that preserved the integrity of creation. The cities mentioned in those ancient accounts were not simply places on a map. They were symbols of choices repeated until they formed a pattern too strong to ignore. Armies represented collective intent, and populations reflected the direction of entire societies. The intervention of an angel, then, was not an act of force but a moment when the spiritual and earthly realms converged to restore a balance long disrupted. Within this story, the angel's presence carries the same atmosphere of solemn inevitability. He moves with a stillness that reflects centuries of celestial duty, a stillness recorded in countless traditions. When he stands before the world, his radiance is not meant to overwhelm but to clarify, illuminating the truth that has been building slowly through time. Those who witness him feel the weight of history pressing gently against their awareness, reminding them that actions, once set in motion, continue shaping the world until the moment they are confronted. It is in this confrontation, not through conflict, but through revelation, that the angel's role finds its full meaning. Thus, the ancient accounts serve not as distant legends but as mirrors reflecting the very nature of the angel in this tale. They show that his presence is part of a larger narrative that has guided humanity for ages, a reminder that creation is upheld by forces that act with precision, purpose, and unshakable resolve. In him, the echoes of those old stories come alive once more, carrying the same message they always have. When an angel arrives with a mission, it is not destruction that defines the moment, but the restoration of order in a world that has drifted too far from its intended path. The narrative emphasizes that evil is not always the work of demons. Sometimes punishment comes from the divine realm, and this understanding shifts the entire perspective of the story as it continues to unfold. From the beginning, the presence of the angel has challenged familiar assumptions, revealing a world where the forces of light do not always appear in comforting forms, and where justice does not always feel gentle. As the threads of ancient accounts weave together, a deeper truth emerges. Not every moment of reckoning arises from darkness. Some come from a place so pure, so uncompromising in its purpose that humans often struggle to accept it. In this world, the line between fear and reverence blurs, not because the angel embodies cruelty, but because he reflects a truth that allows no hiding place. For generations, people have explained hardship or sudden judgment by pointing toward unseen forces of shadow, believing that devastation must arise from malice or corruption. Yet the old writings tell a more complex story, one where celestial beings acted not out of hostility, but out of responsibility. When the world drifted far from the path it was meant to follow, these beings appeared not to torment, but to correct, to restore, to realign what human choices had slowly pushed out of balance. This idea becomes essential to understanding the angel at the heart of the narrative. His presence does not signify the triumph of darkness. It signifies the seriousness of the divine order he represents. He is not the bringer of evil. He is the answer to a breach in the harmony of creation. As the story continues, the weight of this truth becomes more tangible. The angel's calm demeanor, his unwavering focus, and the silence that heralds his arrival all point to a purpose guided by something far beyond mortal desire. He does not act out of passion, and he does not take pleasure in the role he must fulfill. Instead, he becomes the embodiment of a universal law that exists independent of human emotion. When he steps into the world, he brings with him a clarity that dissolves confusion and exposes intentions. This is where the fear truly lies, not in violence or force, but in the undeniable illumination of choices long hidden. In many ancient accounts preserved across cultures, moments of divine intervention were marked by a profound stillness, as though the world itself paused to acknowledge a presence that carried the weight of truth. These stories describe how people instinctively sensed that what was unfolding came not from hostility, but from a realm that sought to preserve the balance of existence. Cities, armies, and entire generations learned that accountability does not always come from the darkness people fear. Sometimes it arrives through a light so powerful that it reveals the consequences of every decision made within its path. That light could appear overwhelming, but it never emerged without reason. The angel in this narrative stands firmly within that tradition. Every step he takes reflects a lineage of celestial interventions that transcended culture and time, waving a shared message through history. Justice does not need malice to be severe. His presence reminds the world that judgment may sometimes come from an unexpected direction, and that the forces dedicated to order can be as formidable as any threat imagined in the shadows. His actions, though difficult for human hearts to understand, are part of a larger design that seeks to preserve the integrity of creation, even when doing so requires confronting truths long ignored. In this light, the angel becomes a symbol of accountability rather than fear. His role does not reflect the workings of evil, but the fulfillment of a responsibility older than any kingdom, older even than the stories that attempt to describe him. And so the tale continues, guided by the presence of a being whose mission challenges every assumption about good, evil, and the true source of judgment in a world shaped by choices and their consequences. The story challenges the common belief that angels are always gentle, highlighting the complexity of angelic roles in Scripture. And as the narrative deepens, this becomes one of its most striking revelations. From the earliest moments of the tale, the angel's presence has unsettled expectations, offering a portrait of the divine that is far more intricate than the comforting images often imagined. Instead of appearing as a figure who offers reassurance through soft radiance and gentle words, he emerges as a being shaped by a purpose that surpasses human understanding. His calm carries weight, his silence contains truth, and his radiance reflects a justice unclouded by hesitation or emotion. Through him, the story invites the audience to reconsider what it means for a celestial being to serve a higher order, and why their roles are far more diverse than the simple labels of protector or guide. Throughout sacred history, angels have appeared in many forms, sometimes offering comfort to those in distress, and at other times standing as formidable agents of order. These varied roles show that their nature cannot be confined to a single expression. When they appear as messengers of hope, their presence brings peace. When they arrive as guardians, they shield without wavering. And when they are sent to restore balance, their actions carry the firm certainty of a purpose that predates the world they step into. The story of this angel draws from this larger legacy, weaving together threads of tradition that depict celestial beings as instruments of a vast design. Each moment of their intervention shaped by the need of the time rather than by human expectation. As the narrative progresses, the contrast between the angel's serene appearance and the gravity of his mission becomes even more striking. Those who witness him feel both awe and unease, not because he displays hostility, but because his presence reveals the truth that roles aligned with light are not always soothing. The scriptures speak of angels who comfort the weary, but they also describe moments when these beings arrive as reminders of the seriousness of the divine order. These dual aspects do not contradict one another. They form a whole, illustrating the depth of responsibility entrusted to them. In this story, the angel stands precisely in that intersection, embodying both the beauty of celestial purpose and the solemn weight of judgment. It is this complexity that gives the narrative its depth. Listeners who follow the story slowly come to understand that the angel's actions are not meant to instill fear, but to reflect a form of justice that cannot be softened without losing its integrity. His mission is precise, his movements deliberate, and his presence unmistakably tied to a higher will. The gentleness often associated with angels arises in moments where humanity needs comfort. But when the world has moved far from balance, a different role emerges, one that requires a firmness rooted in ancient law. The tale brings this contrast to life, showing that the divine realm contains roles far broader than human stories often reveal. Within this expanding picture, the angel becomes both a symbol and a reminder. He shows that celestial beings are not shaped by emotion. They are shaped by duty. Their gentleness does not weaken their resolve, and their firmness does not erase their connection to light. They move through history with a clarity that reflects the nature of the realm they come from. Carrying messages, protection, or correction depending on what the moment requires. By revealing this complexity, the story invites the audience to look beyond familiar depictions and see the fuller truth presented in ancient writings. That angels are not defined by softness or severity alone, but by a purpose that encompasses both, united by a commitment to uphold the harmony of creation. Through this lens, the angel at the center of the narrative stands as one of the most compelling reflections of divine order, unpredictable only to those who view the world through human expectations, yet entirely consistent within the larger tapestry of sacred history. The overall message becomes clear. Fear should not be directed at demons, but at divine judgment delivered through powerful heavenly beings. And as the final threads of the narrative come together, this truth settles over the story like a quiet revelation. Throughout the journey, the angel has stood not as a figure of darkness, but as a reminder that true authority does not shout or threaten. It arrives with a calm that exposes everything hidden beneath the surface, a clarity that reveals every choice made along the way. In this light, the familiar idea of fear shifts. It no longer centers on forces that tempt or mislead, but on the profound responsibility woven into the fabric of existence, an order upheld by beings whose purpose transcends anything shaped by human intention. As the tale reaches its end, the angel's presence echoes through every earlier moment. He embodies a justice neither cruel nor careless, a justice that does not seek to frighten but to correct, to restore what has quietly drifted off balance. The narrative shows that fear of darkness is often misplaced, because shadows thrive on confusion and illusion. Divine judgment, by contrast, carries no deceit. It stands in full truth, offering no place to hide from the consequences already set in motion. And in this clarity lies the reason many find it more unsettling than any imagined force of evil. It reflects the world exactly as it is, shaped by the actions of those who inhabit it. Through this lens, The angel becomes the final reminder that the greatest power in the story does not come from chaos, but from order. It does not arise from temptation, but from purpose. And it does not belong to beings who distort the truth, but to those who reveal it without hesitation. This perspective reshapes the way the audience understands the divine realm, showing that heavenly beings are not defined by gentleness alone. They carry roles that demand resolve, strength, and an unwavering commitment to what is right. When such a being steps into the world, it is not a sign of fear, but of finality, a moment when everything aligns with the justice that has watched over creation since the beginning. As the narrative closes, the story leaves behind a sense of quiet reflection. It invites listeners to consider the weight of their own choices, the paths they walk, and the unseen order that surrounds every moment of life. The angel's presence fades not into darkness but into a radiance too vast to fully comprehend, leaving behind only the certainty that true judgment, when it comes, does so with purpose and meaning. Thank you for listening to this journey. If you found this story thought-provoking and would like to explore more narratives that uncover hidden layers of history, scripture, and legend, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing stories like this to life.